For the Toshiba receiver. So I'll run through controls real quick, and then we'll look at the setup on the back panel. But this is your power switch. You can see that I don't have it plugged in right now, but you can set it to speaker A, speaker B, speaker A plus B, or set it to off. That means it's on, but the speakers are off if you want to use headphones and not have anything come out of the speakers. So that's what that means. I think the bass and treble are pretty self-explanatory. If you're playing records, you might just try testing off and on and see if you prefer one or the other. Balance, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Tape monitor, this is for if you hook up a tape deck and you want to record from one source to another source. But be careful with these, because sometimes if you turn this some combination, it may seem like the stereo is broken, there's no sound coming out, you can't figure out why. One of the things you want to check is tape monitor. If any of these are flipped, it could be routing the output to the tape out, and there will be no sound coming out of the speakers. So something to keep in mind. Your function, AM, FM, phonos for records, auxiliary. There is jacks in the back if you want to hook up, maybe an iPod or something that you could plug in. So you could actually hook up a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi and stream music to the auxiliary, which is pretty cool. I do that quite a bit. FM muting. FM muting will cut down the noise in between channels when you're on FM and you're trying to tune and you don't want a bunch of static or loud noise in between. It'll only let really strong stations through. So if you have FM muting on, you may find that, gosh, I can't find any stations on FM. Check your FM muting, turn it off, but make sure your volume's not up too loud, and you'll be able to catch even weak stations and stations that sound great with FM muting off, but which will just disappear when you put FM muting on. And then your stereo mode or mono, I think that's self-explanatory. Loudness, that gives it that extra punch, makes it sound a little bit more full, especially at lower volumes. And then your tuning knob and your volume knob, I think, are self-explanatory. This is the back panel. On the front, where we had the power on and talked about A, B, A plus B, it's important to note that it supports 4 ohm to 16 ohm if you're only playing out of the A channel, or 4 to 16 ohm if you're playing only out of the B channel. But if you're playing both A and B channel at the same time, don't use 4 ohm speakers. That would potentially damage the amplifier. So here's the panel for hooking up the speakers. You've got your left and your right, and you can see this is the A, this is the B, so you can either play left and right out of A, or left and right out of B, or both left and right out of A and B simultaneously if you want to set up that many speakers. And maybe you run these to a different room and use those as zones. So it's important to note that you never want to hook up or disconnect or really do anything with the speakers while the receiver is turned on. It could potentially be very damaging to, you could easily fry the amplifier if you have these wires plugged in, if you cross the wires between the positive and negative and the amplifier is turned on. I've done it myself. It's not something you really want to do. So just keep that in mind, that whenever you're setting up, or if you're going to move it, or you're going to rearrange, you're going to switch speakers, you're going to try out some new speakers, always make sure that the unit is off. There's an antenna on the back. This is actually the AM antenna, so probably doesn't matter too much, but you can move it around if you want to get a better AM signal if you're listening to AM radio. For the FM antenna, typically just run a wire to the 300 ohm antenna connection. This is actually be enough to pick up most stations that you're going to listen to. The 75 ohm is really if you're going to use like a cable, like for cable TV, and you're going to hook it up to an antenna. That way it would be the 75 ohm. 300 ohm is if you're going to run, those antennas that have the 2 wires that run in parallel. But really, just hooking one wire up tends to get in channels pretty good. And there's a ground. And then if you're going to use an external AM antenna, you would use this. Otherwise, it'll go to this. For the inputs, there's an input for auxiliary. Again, if you wanted to hook up some device, maybe it's a wireless and you want to stream audio, you would hook it up here and then use whatever device to stream to that, and it'll works pretty nice. Now the phono. This is where you're going to want to plug in your phono input. So I actually have the turntable here. you would put the red in the red, and the white in the white. And then this is a ground wire. You put the ground in the ground here, basically, is how you set that up. And then you're pretty much ready to go. This would be if you want to hook up a tape deck. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't need to worry about that too much. And then there's courtesy outlets here. So you could actually plug this into the wall and then plug your turntable into the switched outlet. And that way the turntable only turns on when you press the switch or you turn the switch to the power to this unit. So that way it would always be off and it would only turn on when you turn this on, and then you would be able to turn it on over on the device itself. Another note about hooking up speakers, typically there'll be a red or a different color, or maybe it's got a line, but some way to differentiate between the two strands of wire that make up the speaker wire. This one has a copper color on one and more of a gray neutral color on the other. So what I do is I hook the red colored lead up to the positive, or the red, and then hook up the silver or the gray colored, the neutral colored one to the negative, and then I'll do the same thing on the back of the speaker. What can happen is if it wouldn't really damage anything if you switched it around or had the two speakers opposite each other, but it can really impact the performance of the sound because you want the speakers both moving, in the same direction at the same time. Got it set to, I think, AM station right now. Let's see here. Maybe not. Oh no, I'm sorry. I got it set to phono. So on AM, I'm sure you don't listen too much AM, but you can see the signal meter here. That's this guy here. Indicates the strength of the signal for AM. And then when you turn to FM, you would use the tuning dial to tune your stations in. So you can see as I find that station here, I can. So when it's in the middle, that's when your station's tuned in. I just set the speakers up for demo purposes. All right, and then the turntable itself. So let's go ahead. I'll set this to phono. And I know you've seen it, but we'll just go ahead and play it. Maybe go ahead and shut this guy here. Hit the start button. See turn it down a little bit. It's got a real clean looking unit. Silver face. This would have been early 80s, but it's got that late 70s, early 80s look. So it presents really well. I mean, there's a couple dings like here, little ding here. It's not perfect, but again, it's pretty clean. It's good looking. It's a cool receiver. Sounds great.